Now, speaking of unity, as I've said, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese, his response to the death of the Queen and to Charles becoming king has been almost perfect. Now, he flies out tomorrow, Albanese, to go to the funeral and meet the king. But all this travel, really, I think is starting to catch up with Albanese, and I think it's caused him a bit of an embarrassment. How often does he travel now? As soon as he got elected Prime Minister, and we're talking just 4 months here, he shot off to Japan, which was a very important meeting with our allies, then to Europe, then to Ukraine, then to the Middle East, Indonesia, the Pacific, now to London for the funeral, straight after that to Japan for another funeral, former Prime Minister Abe. Still to come before Christmas, a summit in Bali, another summit in Thailand. This is incredible. And Albanese has now had to make an embarrassing exception. He's hinting he'll have to skip this year's big United Nations summit in Egypt on global warming. Joining me is Sky News political editor Andrew Clennell. Andrew, all this travel by Anthony Albanese when there's so much to do at home. Now, a lot of those meetings I think were necessary, but then I wonder about some of them, and I wonder too, has he let his diary get out of control?
Well, I don't think so, actually, because how can you not go to the Queen's funeral? And you should probably go to Shinzo Abe's funeral. And he's not gone to the States, which he was invited, I think, to the States, or there was an opportunity to go to the UN General Assembly and then to the White House at the end of this month. So if he'd done that, I would be totally with what you're saying. But I think he has pulled back, and he's just got, I mean, he's can't avoid these funerals. And then he's got the G20, obviously he has to attend at the end of the year. So that should be it for the year. So, for example, Jacinda Ardern, she's going to the UN General Assembly after the Queen's funeral. So because he's avoided that, I think he has recognised the issue and he has reined it in. But I do think it's disappointing that he set the sitting week when he's at Shinzo Abe's funeral. There's 2 spare weeks in October. He could have moved the sitting week too. So perhaps he should have done that. But otherwise, I'm not too critical.
Well, that's what I'm asking about, really, because he's going to miss the few days of when Parliament does sit. He's got the Crime Commission legislation. Is not going to honour the promise that he made before the election to have that legislation through before Christmas. And, of course, more interesting, and I actually should be grateful. I should be grateful. He, it seems, will not now be able to go to the Global Warming Summit in Cairo. And I think, great, if he can't go there, he can't make mischief with global warming policies. But doesn't that make him a hypocrite?
Well, that would have been another sitting week. So that you would be absolutely belting him if he did that. That's for sure, Andrew. So I think the thing there, I think the thing there was he was going to go if Australia was hosting it next year and we're not. So that's why he hasn't gone to that one.
Yeah, but then again, this is the same guy that was belting Scott Morrison for being ambivalent about whether he'd go to the Glasgow Global Warming Summit, which turned out to be a complete frost with everyone, with either the big leaders not going or since Britain backing down in the face of the energy crisis from the commitments they made there. So anyway, but like I said, I can hardly complain that it's not going. I was a bit surprised, Andrew, to see another of the Teal candidates. We've already talked at the top of the show about Monique Ryan and her embarrassment. This one, former ABC journalist Zoe Daniel. She posted this photo of herself with a diplomat of the Chinese communist regime saying, "Today I met with officials from the Chinese embassy to discuss ways in which our countries can engage in reasoned discussion and build a working relationship." And in the past, Daniels has criticised Australia for not having this working relationship when it was the Morrison government, saying we must proceed with measured diplomatic moves towards China, not via the front pages. Don't you think China's going to love having a Teal independent like Daniel out there seeming to run an alternative foreign policy?
Yes, I do. So I think you should take the meeting. You should be very careful what you say in the meeting. And if you're going to post something, you just post, "I've been to this meeting," and not try to make it political. And it's very interesting to see what they're trying to do. The Chinese embassy, they even invited the Labor's National Secretary, Paul Erickson, in to see them, which is odd. And he got advice from the government that that was okay. So they're clearly on a charm offensive. And you have to be very careful with a power like China and President Xi's government, and not naive as that post appears to be, frankly.
Well, I thought the way it was framed, I mean, going in there for a briefing or something, or sure, but to discuss, the way she put it, to discuss ways in which our countries can engage in a reasoned discussion that suggests that she's not happy with the kind of discussion our governments have had with China, and here's an alternative. I just think that is sending a very wrong message that encourages China, makes it think it can divide our political parties here. We will not speak with one voice. I think it's a terrible look. Opposition leader Peter Dutton, Andrew, has been drowned out by Albanese during the morning for the Queen. Like you, I think Albanese has been very good. But he got a chance when Albanese did refuse to rule out scrapping having the monarch's head on the $5 note now that we've got King Charles instead. Here he is.
It's trying to take advantage of the circumstances that we're in at the moment. I'd be surprised if the Prime Minister supported Andrew Leigh. I'd be disappointed if he did, because if we're a republic at some stage, then that's a decision for the Australian people to make. But we're with our current arrangements at the moment, and we should honour those arrangements, and that includes in relation to the $5 note.
Andrew Clennell, why did Albanese give Dutton this opening? Why didn't he just say there will be no change just because there's a change in our monarch?
Because he's a Republican, Andrew, and he's been doing his best to hide it. And look, I reported earlier in the week, my understanding is there are some people in the government whose view is the government's policy should be a voice referendum first term and a Republican one second term. I'll tell you what, there'll be a lot less appetite for a Republican referendum if the voice one isn't successful, and it doesn't look like it will be successful. It will struggle. So they've got their work cut out there, but that's what they actually want to do. And he can talk all he likes about, now's not the time. Well, now's not the time because, you wouldn't want to be turning up at the Queen's funeral saying, oh, by the way, I want a Republic and I don't want the King on the $5 note. But he answers the questions with his non-answers.
To fight on.
Sorry?
But what a pathetic fight to, what, the Republican referendum is going to rise and fall, depending on whether he takes the King's head off the $5 note.
Just chuck the King on the note.
Seriously.
Yeah. Well, the other thing is the King's going on the coins. Andrew Leigh said that. So why is the King on the coins but the $5 note's a matter of conjecture? Well, they say Andrew Leigh said it's because he's the Assistant Treasurer for the viewers who don't know. It said it's because that was about the personal thing of the Queen, whereas the coins are about the monarch. So figure that one out. But I'd just probably say, the King will go on. Nothing to see here. But it's one of those weeks where there's only one subject, and that means that subjects like this crop up, Andrew.
Yeah, I know, Andrew. But I just thought, otherwise he's been note perfect. Talking about notes, he's been note perfect. But this was the one thing that a little cheap, we're not going to have him on the $5 note. I mean, seriously, I just thought that was ridiculous, and it lessened the tone. But anyway, that said, I think he's drowning out Peter Dutton, who's got to wait for his chance for sometime in the future. Andrew Clennell, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Andrew.